Today, we're leaving Gouda for a much too short visit to the city of Leiden. The entire trip should take us about 3.5 hours. And after an amazing first full season of cruising the Netherlands, we're sorry to say this will be our last voyage of the season. It may not be the most scenic of routes, but the real reward was Leiden itself. You may not see it here, but we're at a four-way intersection of a canal and a river, with a number of boats in front and behind us that had to stand off for quite a while waiting for the bridge to open. Not a lot of fun given some of the idiots in the rental boats, and a steady cross breeze blowing us sideways. Making our way up the river, as we got closer to Leiden, the traffic became increasingly busy, with all sorts of day cruisers and overcrowded rental boats, full of university students in varying degrees of inebriation and competence, cutting back and forth across the canal. Not a lot of fun trying to make our way through in a 35-ton vessel without running them over. At one point, the bridge keeper even got on the loudspeaker to give them a piece of his mind. Even though it was a bit stressful, we did eventually make it to our destination without incident. Next morning, we crossed the bridge for a stroll past the Cat Cafe and into Leiden itself. Just as we got back to our boat to cool off after our walk, a couple of local kids rode by on their bikes and stopped to ask if it was okay if they jumped off our boat into the water. I don't know what it is about flat-bottom Brielle that attracts kids that want to jump off, but if this keeps up, I think we may start charging admission. Afterwards, our friends Christy and Hans drove over to meet us for dinner and drinks. Hans was born here in Leiden, and his family history here goes back hundreds of years. He's practically Leiden nobility, given that one of his ancestors served as mayor back in the 1600s. The crest here that Hans is pointing to represents the Butchers Guild, which Hans's family belonged to for several generations. Next morning, we noticed there was a long line of cars waiting to cross the bridge. We looked over to find the bridge was open to allow this ginormous boat through. Unbelievably, this was a private pleasure craft and not a commercial freighter. And from what we could see, aside from the skipper and a couple of crew, there were only 3 people on board. Look at the size of that. Holy crap! They're just coming in here. Are you freaking kidding me? This will be interesting.
He'll have to go in and back in.
That's mental. Yeah, he'll have to go nose all the way in and back all the way in here. And take up that whole part of the quay. It's got to be a hotel bar. Do you not think?
I don't know. It's got a rescue boat.
Taking pictures, even the bridge operator. I learned afterwards that the vessel previously belonged to a Belgian TV personality that hosted some sort of travel show, sort of a Belgian Rick Steves. skipper aboard this monster deserved a round of applause for his handling of a boat this size in such a confined space. Watching him bring this boat in really was a piece of performance art. We left later that day for the first leg of our voyage back to our home port of Brielle. We decided to make a couple of stops along the way home, and our first overnight would be in the village of Outwater, which was by all accounts worthy of a visit itself. Unfortunately, by the time we arrived, there wasn't a mooring spot big enough to accommodate us anywhere in sight, so we opted to camp a little bit illegally at an industrial site. The only downside to this spot was that it was surrounded by security fencing, which made it impossible for us to get out and go for a walk into town. We had plenty of provisions on board, so we would just make do. Next morning, having been approached by the yard foreman, we were informed in a friendly manner that we were on private property and that we'd have to leave. So we did. And along the way we passed this thing, and as far as we knew, there was no rain in the forecast. Thank goodness. Given the shape this thing was in, I don't know how long it's going to stay afloat. Our next overnight stay was at the IJsselmeer Marina, located right at the convergence of the Hollandse IJssel Canal and the New Maas River. Before turning in for the night, we went for a walk along the docks and ran into some fellow Grand Banks owners. Our last boat was a Grand Banks 42, which we sold just a little over a year ago. Here she is at anchor in Vancouver with her new owners. Going through Rotterdam, past the very old and the very modern, we knew we were almost home. And that'll about do it for this episode. Join us next episode, where we drain our kids' inheritance with a 2-week stay in the boatyard. Thanks for watching.